Hi, my name is Yvonne Flowers, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the City of Poughkeepsie Procedural Justice Committee. And joining me tonight to help facilitate this forum is Bishop Debra Gause, who is also the co-chair of the committee, Mayor Rob Rolison, and City of Poughkeepsie Community Engagement Director John Penny. Some of the members of the Procedural Justice Committee are also in attendance, and we want to welcome you all to tonight's Police Reform Community Forum. Each municipality in Dutchess County that has a police department must submit a reform plan that covers the areas stated in the governor's executive order. The Procedural Justice Committee, that consists of police officers and community stakeholders, was asked by the mayor to assist the City of Poughkeepsie Police Department in developing a police reform plan that would meet the governor's requirement. The Procedural Justice Committee's task is to obtain public input from the community and make recommendations on what should be included in the police reform plan that will eventually be presented to the Common Council and for approval, and then submitted to the state by April 1st, 2021. At this point, I will turn it over to our mayor to talk a little bit more about the process in submitting the reform plan.
Thank you, Yvonne. I want to thank everyone for their participation tonight, but I really want to personally thank Common Council member Yvonne Flowers and Bishop Debra Gause for agreeing to serve as co-chairs of the Procedural Justice Committee. And they both were members of that committee. And I asked them to chair it, and I'm very pleased to have them here tonight to help facilitate this forum. In addition to members of the Procedural Justice Committee who are on the forum tonight, so is Chief Tom Pape, who was listening in to hear your views. Now, there will be other public outreach efforts made during this process. This will not be the only one, including another public meeting once a draft of the city's plans are finished. Now, we've also created a webpage at cityofpoughkeepsie.com/police collaborative plan, where you can find out more about the governor's executive order and the Procedural Justice Committee.
So tonight, we are hosting this forum for the City of Poughkeepsie to get additional feedback and comments about your ideas regarding police reform. That will help us formulate the City of Poughkeepsie's police reform plan. We value your opinion. This will be a listening session, so no one will be responding to any of the comments during this forum. But we will listen, and we're going to take notes of the ideas and the comments that you share with us tonight. We are hopeful for a constructive time tonight, your comments to help us to continue this work. We also encourage people to use the feedback form on the city's police reform webpage to make additional comments. You are welcome here tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Rolison and Bishop Gause, for your comments. So before we get started, we're actually going to go through a few ground rules for tonight. So, each person who's registered in advance will speak first. When your name is actually called, state your name, the town you live in, and the organization that you're affiliated with, if applicable. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Once you're speaking and the 3 minutes is up, I will kindly ask you to wrap up your thoughts and to end immediately. And then ask you to submit any additional comments to the City of Poughkeepsie's website under the Police Reform Plan, where there's a section there where you can enter your comments. After all registered speakers have been called, and if the time allows, I would ask if anyone else would like to speak, and if you can use the raise hand feature to identify yourself, and we will call you to speak. Just to let you know that the forum will be recorded and it will be placed on the website to be viewed at a later date. So at this point, we want to welcome our first speaker as Lisa Leach Anderson.
And we don't, this is John Penny, we don't see Lisa in the queue, so we're going to move to the second.
Okay, so our next speaker is Derek Roberts.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Okay, my name is Derek Robert. I live in 148 Franklin Street, Poughkeepsie, New York. My organization are NGen, DCPA, and a few others around the Hudson Valley region. And my feeling with procedural justice, because this, I don't really know much about it, but what I would like to see is more, people in the impact communities on the council, on the committee myself, people who live right in, like, in the, let me see, the sixth and your bomb follower, because they're the more impacted people, and I think they should be on the committee too to speak about the issue, because they're the ones being more impacted. And that's what I have to say. But like I said, I'm still supporting this civil review board, but also because I would like also to have like a second opinion at times, because we want to hear from both sides. But I definitely feel if that's not, we can use that and get more people on the Procedural Justice Committee from those communities I just spoke of to speak on it, because they're the ones that is mostly involved and affected. Thank you again, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Derek. Our next speaker will be Brian Robinson.
Brian, you should be unmuted. Brian? Brian Robinson?
Okay, well, we can go back to Brian Robinson if he's not unmuted. So our next speaker will be Eli King. Eli?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I like Derek. I'm not. Oh, my name's Eli King. I live in the city of Poughkeepsie. Like Derek, I'm not very familiar with Procedural Justice Committee. I would suggest that y'all recommend that the Civilian Review Board is passed as originally written. Because most of the complaints about that I've heard about that tend to have something to do with the police not having been consulted or having a say. There are 90 officers. I believe under a quarter of them live in the city of Poughkeepsie. They're not Poughkeepsie residents. So if we're talking about making the police department answerable to the people of Poughkeepsie, I don't see any reason they should be consulted. I agree with Derek that should be making sure to consult with the most impacted people. You know, a lot of people probably don't know about this meeting or have time to do it. A lot of people are at work right now, don't have Wi-Fi at home. And I want to point out that the police don't prevent crime. You know, if that were the case, then you know, a country with a population of incarcerated people as high as ours, you know, the crime shouldn't really be something we're talking about. The majority of people in Dutchess County Jail are in their misdemeanor charges. And you know, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know a lot about your committee, or what the scope of what you're looking at is, but you know, incarcerating people for misdemeanors, you know, you're taking away their ability to work, get money, you know, pay the price that our society demands for us to have food and shelter. And then, you know, just by doing that, you are creating crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. So I guess we'll try to go back to Brian Robinson.
you hear me now?
Yes, yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, Brian.
Great. I'm Brian Robinson. I live on Montgomery Street. I'm a member of Engine and steering committee of the Race Unity Circle, founder of Equitable Future Inc. I'm a member of innumerable coalitions locally and in the Hudson Valley. I'd like to say that we're addressing a system that's not broken, but instead one that's been functioning exactly the way it was designed to function. Addressing biases and prejudices of individual police through training will no doubt be helpful, but it's putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. The reality is that only a small part of the issues come down to individual police, while the problem almost in its entirety is the system that we call policing. I've had a lot of dissatisfaction with the process here and in the county, but I will say I'm happy to see the process is getting better, but it still falls well short of admirable. I appreciate the new chairs being appointed to the PJC. I appreciate that John Penny has been working on outreach. I appreciate that the mayor will speak to groups like Engine and the coalition forming around police reform. But the public input process still amounts to really just a dog and pony show. It's going to be an embarrassingly low number of people who know about this meeting, even less who have access to it because of device and internet issues. And this minuscule amount of people who are in the know and who have accessibility are given just 3 minutes to describe what's gone wrong over decades or centuries and where we need to go in the years to come. Until we have statistics on what our police department actually does, all contacts they have with the public by demographics, how their time is spent, among other things, until we have that, we're hindered, if not blind, in deliberating what needs to be done. How can our services be changed to serve the community? Without those statistics, I can only speak to what happens nationally. And according to none other than the Department of Justice, about 2/3 of police resident contacts are due to traffic stops and accidents. Why do police need to be responding to these? Why can't civilians? Only 4% of police time in the 3 large departments that keep track of average shift time spent, that's in New Orleans, Montgomery County, Maryland, and Sacramento. Only 4% of that time is spent responding to and investigating violent crime. Less than 1/3 of resident contacts, again, according to the Department of Justice, are due to crime. Less than 1/3 of contacts.
Excuse me, Eli, your 3 minutes is up, so can you just
Yeah,
wrap
I'll
up?
wrap it up. Legislation requiring our police to gather these statistics would be the first step. Legislation saying that we as a city will commit to coming back every so often, maybe every 4 years, to do this again and again, each time armed with experience, statistics, and facts, is the first step toward a long-term solution.
Okay, thank you, Eli. Our next speaker is Robert Pemberton.
I don't see him in the queue, Yvonne.
I don't see him either. Okay, the next person, Jeffrey Osler. Is Jeffrey there?
Jeffrey, you're unmuted.
Okay, is Jeffrey on?
Doesn't look, he is unmuted, but he's not on.
All right, so we'll go back to Jeffrey. Frank Flowers. I don't see Frank Flowers there. David Michael. And don't see David. Neil Grover. Okay.
I don't see him.
Chris Biscotta. I don't see Chris. Isaiah Lindsay. I don't see it either. Lori Sandow.
Lori, I unmuted you, Lori.
She's
He's
still muted.
he's gonna have to call him by phone apparently. So once she does that, we'll address that.
Okay, we can come back to Lori.
Oh, hold on. Lori, you there?
Okay, we can come back to Lori.
Okay.
Elijah Appinson. Elijah is there.
Hi.
He's unmuted.
Wonderful. Yeah, hi, I'm Eli Appleson, and I'm a member of Engine and I Am Citizen. So first, I want to start my public comment by saying that people should never call the police, whether it be for homeless support, alcohol and substance abuse, domestic abuse, mental health, violence and conflict resolution, medical health, runaway youth services, or car services. There are many community resources that can be used instead of the police who are known to hurt people in these roles. Now, I have some specific reforms that I suggest the city of Poughkeepsie adopt. We need to drastically defund the city of Poughkeepsie police, and that's obvious, by at least 20% and reinvest that into community resources. Even with a 20% cut, the funds for the city of Poughkeepsie police will be thousands and thousands more than parks and recreation. Secondly, I ask that we adopt the Civilian Review Board. The Civilian Review Board is a simple way to keep police accountable. Finally, I ask that we invest large amounts of funds into mental health resources that can be used instead of policing. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, those with mental illnesses are 16 times more likely to be murdered by law enforcement than those without. There are two additional points that I want to make. First, while these reforms are good temporary changes, they're nowhere near the final changes that need to occur. We need to look towards abolishing the police in Poughkeepsie. I know this is always triggering for people, but it's critical to recognize that when we simply make reforms to a system that is built to criminalize, dehumanize, and disempower Black and Brown people, we are only upholding the system of oppression. Secondly, I need to address some people's notion that these problems that we're talking about do not occur in Poughkeepsie. Look at cases of Jalissa and Jamelia. Look at cases of Nikki Adamando. Look at cases of Black and Brown people in our city being arrested, targeted, and rearrested every day for non-violent crimes. And tell me that policing in Poughkeepsie should not be abolished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elijah. So we're gonna go back to see Jeffrey Osler.
He's not in the queue.
He's still there? He's not there now? Okay, we'll go back to Lori Sandow.
She would have to call in, and I don't see that.
No. Okay, so at this point, what I'll do is, I know there were some people who actually registered and said they weren't sure if they were going to talk. So if you do want to say a few words and comments, please raise your hand and we'll go down the list and call people. I see one. Is it one person here? Going down the list. Charlie Fennel, Beville. Is that correct? Charlie? Do you see him?
Can you hear me?
Charlie, you should be unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Great. Well, first, I'd like to thank you for the work you're doing and to allow me this opportunity to address you all. One of the things that I've noticed is that when it comes to police, it's usually some incident or some issue, and we're trying to promote police community trust. So I think one idea that I come up with is that if we have more opportunities for the police to engage the community in non-issue type environments, like more programs where the police and the community interact, scheduled events, or a weekly or a daily type of events where the police are there and you get an opportunity to interact with them and they get an opportunity to interact with the community. And it doesn't have to be like an expensive kind of thing. It's like, here's where the police are and here's where the community are, and you guys can hang out and talk to each other and just, engage each other in an environment that's not a criminal, or some kind of event has happened and now the police are there. So I think that might be something that you might want to incorporate into this community police trust process. Other than that, I think I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Is there anyone else that wants to speak at this point? If so, just raise your hand. Kevin Carswell?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to echo some points, or at least one point that Brian made, that I'm an engineer by trade. I live in Fishkill, and speaking in a lot of forums like this, I think data is a good place to start. As an engineer, I was always taught when you're solving a problem, you need to gather the data, really understand the root cause of the issues, and that way you have the data in hand to go attack the problems. In other forums, I've suggested that it's very important to set a framework up front. And I think there are 4 key areas that any actions would fall under. And it's a good way to think through the problems. And those 4 areas are improving accountability and transparency. So the Right to Know Act is a good example of that, which was passed. Thank you. And the CRB is another good example of that. So more transparency, more accountability. Second area is community outreach and community collaboration. So the suggestion that was just made to really bring the police and the community together, particularly in parts of Poughkeepsie that really need to build a trust in the police. Third area is education. I agree with Brian, a lot of the problems are systematic, but you can overcome systematic problems with education and training. And the last area is to really rethink the rebalancing of where money is spent. I'm not necessarily saying defund the police, but I think if we look at where the overall budget is spent between mental health care, substance abuse programs, youth programs, and policing, we should really look at, is that in balance where it needs to be? So thank you.
Thank you.
Yvonne, I believe I have Lori, so I'm going to try her, okay?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Lori, you should be okay.
Yep. We can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Tonight's forum troubles me. It troubles me in its mandate, it troubles me in its formulation, and it troubles me in its deadline. At the beginning of June 2020, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order requiring local governments to adopt a policing reform plan by April 1st, 2021, in order to be eligible for future state funding. A guidance document of over 100 pages was also issued. I don't believe that's posted to either the county or city website. Nearly 4 months after Cuomo's order, we find ourselves at this first City of Poughkeepsie public forum. And though the governor's order requires plans developed through an inclusive process, we know that online meetings are not inclusive. They're exclusive to those who learn about them and to those who can access them. And even I've had trouble accessing this one tonight. Based on the last census, Dutchess County has a Hispanic population of a little more than 1 in 10. And the city of Poughkeepsie has a Hispanic population of a little less than 1 in 5. Neither the county nor the city police reform committees properly represent this population among their members. Both the county and the city of Poughkeepsie committees seem to have been selected through closed-door processes, and they meet in closed-door sessions. They're populated primarily, if not exclusively, by individuals representing the middle of the spectrum in the police community debate, and not at all the edges or extremes, or by so-called troublemakers. What criteria was used to select members, we don't know. Will middle of the spectrum committees, no matter how well-intentioned and deep their concerns, advocate for radical solutions? Entirely unlikely. In this way, they replicate the committees and commissions that have been created and issued reports for decades and longer. The Kerner Commission of the 60s, the Los Angeles Commission of the 90s, the Task Force on 21st Century Policing of 2015. These commissions almost certainly meant well, but in one way or another, produced mostly new variations on old themes of procedural modification, training and listening sessions, changes in use of force policies, department alterations, and revamping. What the COVID pandemic has clearly shown is that very specific populations, that is, communities of color, disenfranchised communities, are affected in far greater numbers than others. The very communities facing the greatest racism and discrimination. Will reports, recommendations, and reform reweave the underlying fabric and the central inequalities that exist between the power brokers, the dominant culture, and the rest of the population? Entirely unlikely. Reformed policing does not pay rent. Reformed policing does not improve health outcomes. Reformed policing does not improve educational and employment opportunities. It doesn't solve local rent displacement and gentrification crises, and it doesn't reduce the school-to-prison pipeline, nor the size of the Dutchess County Jail, nor create legitimate alternatives to jails and prisons. Consider police reform? Sure, why not? But let's not kid ourselves that police reform will cure either macro-level societal inequalities, nor even micro-level disparities in arrests and sentencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. I did notice there was a person who had their hand up and then it disappeared, so I'm not sure. Let me just look and see if there's
I
anyone
see
else.
Matthew Carroll.
And I see a Karen Thompson has been up for a little bit there, so.
Okay, so we're gonna unmute Karen.
Yep. Thompson.
Karen Thompson, you're unmuted.
Hi guys, good to see everybody. I think I had my hand raised, but the gentleman with the comment in regard to the community involvement answered or made the statement I thought of. So all I would say is, on behalf of us community leaders that are out there, some of us, we do have great interaction with our police. It's just a matter for me that when we have, as a community participant, parent, person involved in the community, worker in the community, it is hard at times to get or local police departments to do certain things when cross town there's so much going on. However, what I would like to say is, for example, I know being in Poughkeepsie for the past 2 years, my son went to Smith School. we had a police officer who we had an amazing relationship with. My suggestion, how can or ask that the committee consider other avenues of allowing or asking that there are more police officers that are able to interact in the schools with the children, because I think that starts for a great relationship and it will so follow them because they'll start in pre-K and it will go through to the high school, because I think once they get to a certain level of school, it's there that they need the most interaction. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. So there's another person, Matthew Carroll.
Matthew, you should be unmuted.
Oh, wait, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I was just calling in because one thing I did notice is that it seems like all the people that need the police reform the most aren't really here. So I was wondering how we could reach out to the other people in the community so they could get involved in this process, because it has a very short deadline. So that's, a concern of mine, because I think, as other people were pointing out, even knowing about the meeting, I think, was a thing. Access to the Zoom and everything. So, I just think we need to bring more people into the fold, because I noticed that everyone that's on this committee is like community leaders who already have voices. So I was just wondering how you guys thought we could get other people on board with this process. So that's just kind of what I'm taking away from all this tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak? I'll go through. While people are deciding whether to speak, I do want to mention one thing is that for the Procedural Justice Committee, we were told recently about asked about reviewing the police reform plan. So as soon as we got that task, we actually came together to decide to do the forum, but we also have other avenues that we're going to be reaching out to the community. Many of the members that are on the committee are engaged in the community, and they're from all different facets of the community. The Procedural Justice Committee is very diverse with the police officers and with the community members. So we will be reaching out into the community in other ways of getting ideas and comments regarding police reform. As you can see, Bishop Debra Gause is one of the co-chairs on the committee and also has ties with our religious community. So we have people who will be reaching out into the community. We have a few people that are on the committee that will actually represent the Latinx community also. We need to make sure that everyone is involved in that process. So we are looking at that, and we know everyone is not going to have access to the Wi-Fi or even this platform. So we are looking at other avenues to make sure that everyone is included and making sure that a reform plan is formulated that's going to reflect what the community wants and needs. So I just want to make sure we put that out there. The other thing is too, if you want to see who's on the committee, you can actually go to the City of Poughkeepsie website and go under the Police Reform Plan tab, and you'll see the members of the Procedural Justice Committee. And most of you probably would know who they are and know that they're out there in the community, engaged with people in the community. So, but thank you for the comments in regards to that, because that is very important.
Yvonne, just to let you know, in the chat, I put a link to our website, another specific link to the committee members, another specific link to the executive order, and that website, our webpage, does have other information on it that people can find.
And so we'll also be having updated information on that website, so that way you'll see the progress and what we're doing. We know we have a short timeline, so we'll be very, very engaged. We also want to engage our young people and also hear their comments also. So we will, in the future, we're planning on doing a forum with them. And we also have someone that's on the student body government from the school district that's on our committee that will be assisting with that. So we are looking at all other avenues to engage the community in this process. So at this point, I'll look and see if there's anyone else that would like to speak. If so, if you can use the raise hand feature. See Jeffrey Snyder.
Have I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Muted, Jeffrey.
Thank you. So I'm a resident of Poughkeepsie in the first ward. I'm also a member of Engine, and I regularly attend council meetings and criminal justice council meetings. So I just first want to acknowledge that the city of Poughkeepsie Police Department are doing some things right. I love the move to procedural justice and including implicit bias training. And so these are good first steps. I do hope that this committee is also studying the Presidential Task Force on 21st Century Policing, which has some great and concrete recommendations. You know, in terms of procedural justice, it argues that that you need to have legitimate authority for people to obey the law, and so I think that's very important. And some of the ways I think to do that are through things like the Right to Know Act. I also think through the Civilian Review Board, which is also one of their recommendations, to have some form of civilian oversight of law enforcement is essential to building trust. And I think citizens need to have confidence that it's safe to make a complaint and that their complaint will be taken seriously, and that it will not lead to harassment by the police for making that complaint, so retaliation or retribution, and that this Civilian Review Board needs to have full power to investigate and discipline and make their reports public. On top of those, I think there are a couple other things that are worth looking at. One is a better complaint process. I think the online form is completely onerous. It asks for a myriad of details that could be provided later after a complaint has been made. So I think while the police touts the fact that they have very few complaints, I think it's I think part of it is a fear of retaliation, but I think a part of it is also that the complaint process is quite onerous. And I think through follow-up, some of those details can be gathered. A couple of other things, I think the police department really needs to be diversified. I think you're not going to be able to get a lot of trust when you have a majority white and male force policing a very diverse community. The fact that white men have guns and authority and and that they're the ones that are supposed to be taken seriously is going to be problematic, even with the best intentions. I think
I'm
something
sorry.
to look at is, am I out of time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. The other thing I would say is please look at the 911 protocols so that there are other to figure out what kind of calls are coming in and what should be done. I'm not sure that sending police to out to mental health calls might be the best way to resolve those mental health calls. And so maybe adding to the already new step of putting in mental health professionals might be a good tactic to take. All right, thank you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Going down the list. Anyone like to raise their hand and want to speak? And I don't see anyone else. So John, do you see anyone else? In case I missed, I don't want to miss anybody.
I don't, Yvonne.
Okay. Well, at this point, then I guess this is the end of our forum. So I want to thank everyone for participating and attending tonight's forum. Your comments and your ideas are very important to us and will be considered for the reform plan as the reform plan is being developed. Tonight, again, like I said, is not the only way that we'll be reaching out to the community to get input about what people will want to see or their ideas about police reform. So we will be talking with many others in the community. And like I said, our Procedural Justice Committee is very diverse and they're very engaged in the community. And many of them are already talking to people in their circles and looking for feedback. And we'll be meeting almost every other week, pretty much, and we'll be having those discussions in our meeting. So I want to thank everyone for leaving their comments. And also too, that you can go to the website and you can add any additional comments, tell other people to please go on the website and, go to the website and put their comments in there also of how they feel about police reform. This is going to be a collaborative effort in order to have an effective plan. So we really need everybody's input in this plan. So I don't know if anyone else would like to say a few words before we end. The mayor or Bishop Gause?
I would just add to what you said, Yvonne. First forum, many other ways to have these conversations, and really some really great comments tonight. All important. Everything that everyone said was important, and certainly not as a member of the committee, but I know that all of the comments and the thoughts and the ideas will be incorporated into the overall discussion, and we will continue to do our very best to find ways to communicate to our city of Poughkeepsie community. And I thank you and the Bishop for participating tonight, along with John Penny and the IT staff. Thank you.
Okay, so at that point, I guess the forum has ended. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and for participating, and have a good night.
Thank you.